Welcome to Savvy Business, Life Unscripted, with your host, Christina Rivera, where our guests share their wisdom and valuable business tips, empowering our audience to expand their personal potential.
Hello, Wesley E. Henderson. We have Wesley E. Henderson, attorney at law here, to share his wonderful expertise. Some of our best shows at Savvy and Life Unscripted have been with attorneys, because people want to know how to protect their businesses, how to keep it safe legally. And, we're not experts in that field of legal, but you are. And you're going to help us with everything from understanding when to go from doing business as to LLC, incorporated as such, and maybe some tips on how to navigate this new world after COVID business-wise. Welcome, Wesley.
Christine, thanks for having me. You got a great audience and a great show. I think you said you've been doing this for 10 years. That's super cool.
Yeah, 10 years. And it's funny. We started Savvy primarily as a means just to meet other business owners, because we all have our expertise and we can learn from one another. But it's not only been a great learning experience for myself, but for other business owners out there. And today you're going to help us. Let's get started with one important thing. Just share a little bit about your backstory, how you came into law and opening your practices.
Yeah, absolutely. I graduated from law school in 2010. So I've been a lawyer over a decade. I went and worked for, we call it big law. So like a big law firm has, 25 offices or, whatever. And my now wife, fiance at the time, or maybe girlfriend at the time, but I remember telling her, this is not what I thought it was going to be. And I worked, we did like insurance defense, but it was kind of, to me, felt like I was just still doing homework. And I was like, I thought I was done with doing the kind of meaningless, or what felt meaningless stuff. And so anyway, that kind of jolted me. And I worked there for a year and a half, and that jolted me on this, what I would call an entrepreneur's journey. I had to look really hard at why I didn't like that job. It was very safe. It was very secure. It was, a comfortable income. I could predict basically the rest of my life had I stuck with it. But it was still very empty and just, wasn't scratching that sort of internal itch we look for. And, as I started to look with it, and I have a brother, and we sort of started both, and we were in different cities at the time and kind of on different paths, but kind of joined together and decided to open our own law firm. And he's a little bit older than I am. And so we did that. It's been, over 7 years now. So we started it from thin air and got to play entrepreneur a little bit. A lot of lawyers you'll see have their own shop, but usually they start at the big place and they move their clients over. And it's sort of like being a business owner, but it's not. We really bootstrapped it. Started with same laptop we had, and found our way. Now we've got 10 or 11 people in our firm. We've got a good boutique thing that's had its ups and downs, and so we really get the in and outs of running the business and how to get it started. And then also, we're in the middle of a little bit of a growth phase right now that we're still learning and enjoying that phase as well. So that's kind of how I got to be here. And I tell people, leaving that job is really it wasn't really choosing to be the lawyer that was the most significant. I think it was leaving that job and starting this firm with my brother that was really the career changer, the one that I was able to really focus on running a law firm where I'm working day to day with business owners. So I have clients that I really enjoy working with, and I get to know, they're my friends, and I get to help. And it became a very rewarding career, whereas it was very empty feeling for me personally. It's great for a lot of people. So that was kind of my moment, that career changing moment, for me personally. And then we've also, as you know, we've started another company to help entrepreneurs. We've been through the path. I'm a business lawyer. I've helped hundreds of businesses, and from LLCs to lawsuits and all the other, fun stuff you run into. So we started a website that is basically targeted right at, people who need an LLC and need really good templates, but don't want to pay the lawyer, exorbitant hourly rates that it feels like they are at the time you're starting a business. So, we've got a lot of entrepreneur itches that we're scratching.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. When you're getting started, everything is kind of a little overpriced.
Mm-hmm.
But it's important to know how to use your whatever funding you do have properly, so you're not spending money on things that are not benefiting you growing. Because I did a number of ads and big papers getting started that were a complete waste of money, and realizing that what worked for a business of, say, 25 people, 5 people, or 100 people are not going to work for doing business as getting started day one, perhaps. So
right.
With that,
one thing I always hear is that it's hard to spend money on something when you don't have anything really to protect. You might not have a brand or a client or anything like that, and I understand that sentiment. So, we talk people through that. Usually on the drafted legal, that's the name of this other business side, more so than when people call in a law firm. They usually know they want to hire a lawyer and spend on that.
Yeah. Well, we talked a little bit just before the interview about some of the templated law things like Zoom out there that exist. We did that here. We downloaded a template for contract for our clients. But this is better because you work one-on-one with clients to customize, so they have a legal, and it's done by lawyers like yourself and people on your team. So now it is strategic, and this is very important. I don't know if you've had stories like this with your past clients, but I've heard of people I've worked with, business owners who have been burned because I don't need a lawyer. I'll wing this myself. And they wrote this contract that later on they got burned by, partner leave. They go into and lose a slew of money because they didn't go to hire that attorney. So, do you want to pay on the front end or very expensively on the back end?
Yeah, it's kind of the education of being a business owner. We always tell people you either learn it on the front end, or, we'll have people call and they'll, you can hear it in their voice. You don't have to convince them of anything. They've already been through that hardship, whether it's with their business partner or with a client. They want to do preventative care or maintenance, legal preventative things, set it up the right way. Touching on those templates. So, the way we've attacked it is that we started off selling these from our law firm. It's now totally separate. So it's not like you're hiring a lawyer, but it all started with industries that we'd worked with a client. So we would take someone like a consultant, and let's say we created their website policy and their privacy policy, their client agreement, an employment agreement, like an independent contractor agreement to make sure their clients aren't getting poached from people, they're using. And so we would use that as the basis and write it and dial it back a little bit, less customized from that person, but more generally applicable. So it was an industry that we got to know and learn about. And so that way you're starting in a place where it's tailored to your industry, which is when we first started, it was something I didn't realize how significant it was. But when you're writing a contract for a client, you got to know that industry extremely well to be able to protect them. So, sometimes you'll see the ones out there, they'll have a different name. It'll say consultant, client agreement or something, but it says the same thing as the other ones. It's just different at the top virtually. So these are all very tailored to the industry so they can protect it. And then we've got like videos in there. I always think it's really important to understand what it says in there. Like you mentioned, you just download something online and some of it's good and some of it's horrible, but it's hard to know what's what. So let's say you've got an agreement that has 8 outlandish clauses that you don't follow. Well, it kind of waters down we call it like the integrity of the document. Well, if you're only following like 4 clauses and not the other 8, and you want to go enforce clause number 3, well, they're going to say, well, what about the other 8? How did we know that this is the one? So we think it's really important. We do a lot of education, and our templates have a PDF that explains them in a video for people to know what it is and know what it says. It's not written like a bunch of junk that a lot of lawyers have. It's, you pay this amount, I do this, you do this. This is what happens if we don't get along. This is how you cancel it, and tries to be really straightforward. Because when it's straightforward, it's like, how can someone back out of it? How can you say, oh, I don't owe you this money, or this wasn't due until October? It's like, it's written right here. It's quite clear.
Yeah. And Wesley, I love this because one thing I realized from reading a lot of legal documents, I work with a couple clients that have, a slew of documents, and I work doing their AR handling. And sometimes it is very, like 15, 20 pages of what?
Mhm.
Do you do all this stuff? But yeah, that makes sense. Well, why have all this stuff that really doesn't pertain to your business and what you do on a day-to-day basis? Because most people, what I find, aren't even reading the fine print. And then later on, it gets sticky for both sides to try to fight out what's what. So let's make it as clear as possible. Why do you think sometimes with regard to law that things are sort of kind of, well, for me, it seems a bit convoluted and difficult
I'll
to
tell you
understand?
why I think it is. I don't know if this is true or not. I think there's a couple things. It's one, there's so many different scenarios that can jump up on, and a lawyer's hired to go protect the business owner. So you're going to see a bunch of commas in a sentence, and you're going to see every single thing. And then, they write that one, and then something new jumps up. For example, look at what COVID's done to force majeures. Those sort of like, cancel, act of God sort of clauses. We represent some clients who host weddings. I'm in Charleston, South Carolina, and that became a huge point of contention. Lots of money on the line, lots of people. And so those got to focus like they've never gotten before. And who thought of global pandemic in this? So you can see how trying to do every eventuality. So the lawyer's being paid to protect this person. So they use lots and lots of words. And here's the other problem is that lawyers will use what has already been used rather than write it in plain language. And that is just like probably a confidence, nervousness, or safety thing. There's a lot of reason for it. Is a court, the court upheld this clause this way, so I'm going to use it over and over and over again. Yes, precedent. So people get a little more nervous. I tend to think that the plain language. There's times for the the legalese as they call it, but our drafted legal stuff is all pretty plain language because my pitch is that our goal is not to trick anybody into anything. It's just to make it real clear, like, hey, I'm doing this, you're doing that, we got a deal, let's shake hands, let's go. And so it all gets a little watered down. And so, we've always preached to our clients, like law firm clients, you're best off with a very fair deal taken head on. Let's nail everything down. Let's get it, because you want a good deal because it makes a good relationship with whoever you're working with, whether it's a vendor or a client or an employee. If you ever have a deal where one side's getting railroad and they don't know it, I'm like, this is going to go south so fast as soon as they realize it. So you want to be, you want to have good, solid agreements that protect you, but you want to set it up where you're both genuinely, they call it a meeting of the minds, quote, meeting of the minds. You want that. And so we try to, do that. And when you do, that to me is preventative legal. It's how it should be, and then you invite lawyers into it and it makes it all convoluted. But we try to make it be that thing, of course we put protocols in there so that if the other party's not doing what they're supposed to, it makes it easy on us. Yeah.
Well, here's the thing, what you're realizing is that signed contract today with a client, you hope to be an ongoing client that renews every single year, or if whatever your contract, every 2 years or whatever it is, you want it to auto renew or keep renewing and to bring back clients and bring back return hearsay where they tell their neighbors and stuff to come on board. They're awesome, but you're not going to get that if you railroad them. So it doesn't behoove anyone to do a little, a little playing in the
or sneak you'll see like a liquidated damages, which is like, oh, you can't, what Comcast or whatever the cable companies do. You cancel this contract, you got to pay us everything forever, all this sort of stuff. So you just want to have it where it's responsive to the actual damage that it causes. So if I didn't take on clients for these number of months expecting us to work together, and then you leave, well, then obviously it does cause some damage. But we want it to be responsive to that. You don't want it to be necessarily overly punitive. They get stricken down if they are, but you just want a response, and you can explain that to them. I think this is why I like clients to know what's in their agreements, and that way they get asked about it and they say, oh, well, that's just, if you cancel it, I just need time to find someone else to fill your spot. I would have given up opportunities, basic opportunity cost type of explanation. And people get that.
Yeah. Yeah, 'cause
We'll
they,
get that.
everyone wants to be fair. They don't want to diss anyone, but they feel
Yeah.
that they've been disrespected or taken advantage of. Now let's go talk about what's going on lately. It's been a really bizarre. You just mentioned a little bit about the pandemic affecting restaurants or event spaces. You work with a lot of restaurateurs. How have you helped your clients navigate this kind of weird new world, and what's some of the situations to look out for and how they can protect themselves in situations like this very rare crisis that we've had?
Yeah, it's they call it the novel coronavirus, so it kind of legally gives you some level of protection when people talk about liability, because nobody knows. Now we're learning a lot more, obviously, but early on nobody knew what it was doing or what to do. So it's just a brand new world, but it's caused a lot of tension we've seen within a couple different types of relationships. We've seen a lot of business owners have a little more tension with each other. So that's really testing, people who are working together. Obviously, if you don't have like an operating agreement that's real clear on who owns what and how you make decisions, a lot of that is communication. It is very stressful. So when things get stressful, you'll see people turn a little more, everybody's just a little more tightly wound. Yeah. So we've seen that sort of show itself in otherwise what would probably be good relationships. So they're having less money. In terms of the employee situation, that's, pretty well, seen in the labor shortages. We've seen, we're a very big tourist destination town here in Charleston. We've seen restaurants, so, hospitality group that owns like 7 restaurants. They just closed down for an entire day because they couldn't get employees to come. So, there's no major legal trick that I've seen that does anything. We just really encourage our clients to communicate very clearly with their employees about everything that's going on. I always tell them, you want your employees to know that you're looking out for them, that you're taking, whether it's issues with other employees. I had one earlier this week where there was someone came for a job interview, and there was a person started a physical altercation. So we walked through different ways. I think some of that may have happened anyway, but there's certainly you see a little bit more of these incidents happening. And so we talked it through, and I said, you just want to make sure that your employees know that you're protecting them. And so, we took some steps to let them know that, we try to be getting a restraining, just making sure they know we're doing this, and this, get a restraining order, alert anyone, telling people what to do exactly if they saw this individual come back. Anyhow, so it's, been very difficult. We've had a couple of scenarios where we're trying, we'll have people are more willing to, I think, walk off the job in some of the retail lower wage positions. And
can you explain why do you think that might be happening? What's up with that?
I don't know.
Because I've seen that. Just
your guess is,
yeah.
I had a client who runs a retail like a ice cream and coffee shop. So they're working weekend hours, and there's a younger employee, and just Friday afternoon had shifts all weekend. So obviously everybody's got to run all around. So she was looking at options, and there aren't, unless you sign someone up on an employment contract, she was, and people always call me wanting to withhold wages unless they do this and this, which you can't do.
Oh, wow.
If it's under the, federal Fair Labor Standards Act. So if someone works, you got to pay them for it. Wow. Hourly workers, this is the minimum wage and overtime stuff. So even if they,
just to say, if someone's working for you and they don't give you notice and they just walk off, you still got to pay them.
Yeah.
All right.
So the like 2-week thing is more of a manners culture thing that has been ingrained, and it's helpful and it's good and it's polite and it's being a good employee, but there's nothing to it in most states. Now I'm speaking a little generally. Most states are what's called at will. So South Carolina's at will. So the employer can terminate the employee for any reason as long as it's not illegal. Likewise, the employee can leave at any time. Now, of course, you can have an employment contract, like a NFL player or a cardiologist, or, you'll see them, but somewhat rarely, sign into actual contracts. That changes that scenario. But most of the time, your hourly workers are just working at will, and so they can leave whenever they want. So it's really a culture. You're seeing employers have to kind of win over employees a lot more because everyone's willing to leave. You also had the unemployment there, which created a different type of safety net than has ever been in the marketplace before. So it made the cost of walking off a job, and it was also not investigated the same way. So typically, in our state and a lot of others, if someone goes and collects unemployment, they usually can't do that if they were terminated, let's say, for being late, a for-cause thing. And then when someone does get unemployment, it makes your unemployment insurance go up. So it can be quite costly, not horribly, but it does, add another cost. So most employers will fight it if someone got, they'll fight it if it's worth fighting, saying like, no, this wasn't laid off. We actually terminated this person because they were nasty to an employee, to a customer or something like that. Yeah. So during the pandemic, they kind of suspended all the raising of rates, at least in our state. So nobody was investigating it. They didn't have the time. They were doing all the unemployment. So I think everything was just easier. It was like easy, the walking off the job didn't matter as much. You went from, X dollars to not zero, but, still some. So I think that obviously had something to do with it. Who's guess? I don't know what the other forces are there, but, I think we always encourage people, again, the communication side of it. Yeah. It's a persuasion game. It's just say we're a good place to work. We do it here. There's a bunch of other law firms here. We want to be a good place to work. We want to treat our employees fairly, and I'd like to hear what you've seen from it as well. I'm always trying to figure it out.
Yeah. Well, I've heard a number of a downturn of people trying to find good workers. It's just so hard to fill spots. So I think you're right. I think some of the unemployment or ease of getting unemployment, which I didn't know was that much easier. I didn't know they were cutting the investigation of were you fired, how did this come about. If people realize they can get some income as opposed to being homeless tomorrow, and of course in some states even the freeze of rents, I could see why. Well, I don't have to pay rent, and
that's true.
I have food on the table. Yeah, but now we're gonna have to end here soon. We have about 3 more minutes, but I'd like you to just share with our audience, if you are doing business as a company, a sole proprietor, when's a good time to switch over to an LLC or Inc., and what does that mean for small businesses getting started?
I'll do it real quick for you. So I would say as soon as you're taking your business seriously as its own thing. So what the LLC does is it provides a separate legal protection, personal liability protection. So the things that you own are off the table if you owe a debt under the business, or someone slips and falls in your store, or they buy your product online and get injured. Any of those sort of lawsuits, it provides that extra protection from you. So we say the earlier the better on it. And the reason is it's a really good bang for your buck. It's not an expensive endeavor, except for in some states, like even California's brought it down, but they're really high. It's like $800 a year. But like if you take South Carolina or most states, Wyoming's really good, Delaware, Nevada, all these, probably you want to do it in the state where you live and are running your business. But ours is $125 and you never pay anything else again. So it's just a one-time, you pay a lawyer to do it, it'll be more. You use our drafted legal service, it's $197, and it gets, the other goodies with it, with, operating agreements or whatever. But it's not a horrible expense. It's a really, really good bang for your buck to go ahead. We also think that it kind of sends the message. It's like a mindset shift. It's like, hey, I'm doing this. This is a real business. I mean, that's for people who are really debating on like, where am I going to take the leap or not? Like, if you want to take a leap, this is a good moment to take yourself seriously. And you show that to clients. It's a professionalism. You say, look, I'm the real deal. I, dot my I's, I cross my T's, and it puts a really good foot forward. So we think it, has a like mindset shift that you signal to clients. It kind of is you adopt that sort of confidence of being a real business and take yourself, seriously in that way.
That's great. Well, I'm glad you were able to give that feedback. Now, what's the difference between LLC and INC? When would you use one or the other?
Yeah, so INC, that'd be a corporation, like a traditional corporation. You can usually go from an LLC to a corporation. Corporations are, I bet in our law firm, we're 95% LLCs, even with bigger businesses. Corporation would be if you're looking for investors for sure. Mm-hmm. They want to know that they have certain protections. They usually want to see you in a certain state where they know the laws, so they know what type of protections they have as a shareholder. And you're competing for investors. If you want to change ownership easily, people trade shares and all this sort of stuff. Yeah. Anyone who's early in a business otherwise is going to be fine doing an LLC because you can convert from an LLC to a corporation. There's plenty of places that'll make it more complicated than that for you, but I think that's
awesome.
Perfectly good.
Yeah, we should have you back for tax season and see how we could. Do you work at all with taxes?
No, we don't do tax. We'll work with a client CPA or accountant, but we don't. That's out of our.
That's one of the questions we get a lot about too legally. Yeah, but it's been great, Wesley E. Henderson, having you here today to share your great expertise in law for our business owners out there. I thank you so much for coming today to Life Unscripted Radio, Savvy Broadcasting Series. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
You betcha.
Like, subscribe, and share this episode. To listen to more savvy episodes and savvy biz tips, go to www.lifeunscriptedradio.com. To find out about our paid sponsorship opportunities or how to become a guest, email Christina at lifeunscriptedradio.com.